First rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
I was going to rip his heart out. I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been.
Conor McGregor is going to blank Khabib when you guys meet each other.
Stomp on his head as he's unconscious.
Get up, you son of a bitch! Mickey loves you.
I promise I'll work so hard.
God, this is a mistake already.
Fast! Last night I cut the light off in my bedroom, hit the switch, was in the bed before the room was dark.
One trays his way back. One nods as if to say, come on.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Hi, once again, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner, and welcome into The Man in the Arena, the special Randy's Ringside edition, whom we will introduce momentarily. A reminder once again, those of you watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, you can send us instant comments as well off the different platforms. All you have to do is just be logged in, which of course you already are, and we'll be watching the comment boards as we go through the show. And if you'd like to, go ahead, drop us a line or two, if you will, text only. I'm not opening up phone calls on this. I got too much to talk about with this guy. And don't forget, when everything is all said and done, you can go to welcometothearena.com. You can see every episode there. And on audio podcast, you can download it from 9 popular audio podcast platforms, including all the popular ones, he said, using the DJ voice. That would be iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. They all kind of run together after a while, but you know which ones you use. At the end of the show, don't forget, you'll be able to see exactly which ones you can go to and download us. And another reminder, at the end of the show, we're going to bring you something very special, because this being a very difficult and solemn day for many people, September the 10th, you're going to see at the end of the show a little feature as to what they have done at the 9/11 Museum in New York City regarding sports and 9/11. So stay tuned for that. That is after the show. We got a lot to talk about here on Randy's Ringside today, so let's go ahead and bring in the man, if you will, himself. The man, the legend. See, I don't say the myth because that's bad. Usually it's man, the myth, the legend. Call him the man and the legend. Former New York State Athletic Commissioner. You can hear him on Sirius XM in At the Fights with Jerry Cooney. Also, don't forget the book that you have to make sure you pick up. And I know that he would be very upset if I did not point that out, so I'm going to do it right here at the beginning of the show. Randy's Ringside will bring you Randy Gordon, with a forward by Tracy Morgan. Glove Affair. That's what a man's whole existence is about, and his life with boxing. We'll make sure to get that. Do you not have your copy yet? Why not? Go out and get your copy now, and we'll figure out a way to have it virtually signed by the man himself. It's a pleasure to welcome Randy Gordon into the show. How you doing, Commish?
I'm doing great. Just listening to you unwrap my brand new lollipop. And, you don't, remember, the etiquette, you don't chew it. You let it dissolve. You let it last.
Well, that's true. I mean, that is, we brought this up before. What the old commercial that I think we both saw as kids, how long does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? And it would be the wise owl and the kid there. And the kid would ask, what would the wise owl do? I got to get a copy of that commercial. He would just bite down on the on it and say, how many licks does it take? 1, 2, 3. 3. So for those of you who have seen the commercial before, you'll know it. For those of you who haven't, you're just too young. We'll have to bring it in one day and do that. Commish, let's go ahead and get to work. The big story that everybody is talking about right now in boxing this week is certainly interesting, and I've sort of called this the greatest heavyweight fight ever, if you will, because there's a lot of money involved here. Because you have Canelo Alvarez is suing Golden Boy Productions, right, Oscar de la Hoya, and DAZN, DAZN, which is the broadcast outlet that shows his fights, for in excess of $360 million. He is under contract to DAZN to basically have the best competition possible face him in live events. And what he's saying is, you guys haven't given me anything. You're basically giving me second and third round fighters here, which is true if you look at it in the overall scheme of things. A lot of this is almost tomato can fighters. But let's set it up first. What is it that you get from all this in the filing of this lawsuit, which in many ways is unprecedented in boxing?
Here's how I have to look at it. When we first heard about it, Ed, we heard that Canelo Alvarez had signed this mind-boggling 10-fight deal, $365 million. And even for a guy who's not that great in math, I'm saying $365 million, 10 fights, he's getting $36 million plus per fight. Well, they've asked him to take a pay cut. How much of a pay cut, I don't know. But in this age of the global pandemic, I mean, what if they said, would you be willing to take $18 million a fight?
Which is still a lot of money, but which is, of course, more in line with someone who is a champion.
Yeah. And I don't know what they've been asking him to take and what kind of opponents they've been asking him to take. Now, quite frankly, Saul Canelo Alvarez, the redheaded Mexican, is maybe the face of boxing. What do you say about
redheads now?
Well, you're the redheaded Floridian. He's the redheaded Mexican. And in his case, he's getting $36+ million to fight the likes of Danny Jacobs and Triple G. Fine. That's great. And whoever he gets in there with, he deserves it. Any fighter deserves whatever they can get.
Whatever he or she can get. We're already well past that at this point.
And I believe that for any athlete. If an athlete can get himself or herself these mega buck deals, God bless him. And for Canelo, being able to pull off a $365 million deal before the pandemic, great. But he certainly has to understand, and I'm trying to play both sides here. He's got to understand, well, he's saying, DAZN, you guys are not living up to your contract. You're supposed to be getting me fights and putting me on and paying me $36+ million a fight. And Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy, you're my promoter. You're supposed to be getting me fights. You're not getting me any fights.
Well, but he's right. Is he not correct?
Absolutely is correct. Golden Boy is not getting him fights. DAZN is not putting him on. But then on the other side, and this will go to court, and it's going to take some experts, some hearing. We're going to go to a hearing, and the experts are going to sit there and say, well, he's getting $36+ million a fight, but we are in a pandemic, and he won't fight without a crowd. We can't get people into an arena, so where's he going to fight? If he doesn't fight, he can't get paid.
Which is, in many people's minds, if you don't know, there is a legal clause in contracts which is called force majeure, which is technically transferred down to acts of God. So in some sense, you will have attorneys who will argue, and the one side will argue, hey, look, we didn't see a pandemic coming. We can't put people in the arenas, so we can't pay you this kind of money. So this is an act of God that we simply cannot control. Of course, Alvarez's lawyers are going to argue on the other side, we don't care. They're going to say, still cough up the money. So it is going to come down to that. But it still leads to this discussion at the beginning here. $364 million? Let's deal with this first. Was he worth it? I mean, look, forgetting the fact that anybody is worth whatever they can get. I understand that. Get as much money as you can and get out and be healthy. But was a guy like Alvarez really the kind of boxer you want to sign for $364 million?
And you could ask that about anybody. Listen.
No, but I ask you because you're the genius. You're the pro. That's why I come to you.
Okay. Well, here's the story. If Floyd Mayweather, who handed Alvarez his only loss years ago when Canelo was about 21, 22 years old, if Floyd Mayweather could make the kind of money that he has made fighting the likes of Conor McGregor and then going over to over to China and fought a guy who looked like half his size and make the kind of money he made, well, why shouldn't guys try to make the kind of money? And when DAZN was launching, and they said, okay, here's the story. The subscriptions are going to be, to start off, $9.99 a month, which is great, or $100 a year, which comes down to $8.33 a month. And we are going to be putting on guys like Canelo Alvarez and middleweight champion Demetrius Andrade and a whole bunch, Triple G, But you're gonna, for your $9.99 a month, you're gonna almost every week, you're gonna be given fights that are pay-per-view value for this kind of money.
And
so
they're not.
They went out on a limb and they signed Canelo for big money. They signed Triple G for big money. They signed Demetrius Andrade for big money. Now, all of a sudden, comes the pandemic, and many people, me included, I said, well, why should I pay any kind of monthly fee when there's no boxing? There's no programming. I don't need DAZN. I dropped it. And many other people dropped it. Now, all of a sudden, DAZN is a hurting puppy, because many of the people who were paying the $10 a month, you go do the math. I mean, if 300,000 people have dropped it times 10 per month, a lot of money per month.
And we're talking about an organization here, in case people don't know. DAZN is backed, and I want to make sure I get the name correctly here. It is Leonard Blavatnik. Leonard Blavatnik is the guy who has put his money behind DAZN. He's worth an estimated $26 billion.
Right.
So you have the money here, and some people will say, well, wait a minute, if you have that kind of financial backing, then you should have enough to get through any tough times that are here. Then again, businessmen will tell you that if you lose money, period. I don't care if it's $26 billion or $26.
Yeah.
And there are those saying that, well, it just doesn't make a difference here. You couldn't put this together. And now DAZN is sitting there cutting staff in the United States. They're cutting marketing people, production people in the U.S., claiming that they're getting ready to be on a better footing internationally. Randy, I got to tell you, I'm going to be honest. I get it. I understand the pandemic, and I understand money, and I understand the fact that you're not able to get the kind of fights that you promised. But I'm a veteran from years back. I've seen a lot of leagues and a lot of networks go under. This sounds like a classic bait and switch to get people in and to then not deliver the kind of fights that you promised.
I still think it absolutely has to do with the pandemic, because I believe that they would have been delivering.
Okay. Fair.
Canelo would have been fighting. Triple G would have been fighting. All these guys they signed would have been fighting. One of my very favorite fighters was with them for a while, 118-pounder from Japan, Naoya Inoue. He left them. He went over to Bob Arum, to Top Rank, and he's now leaving Japan. He is going to be fighting in the United States in the next 2 months. But there's a lot of guys who have bailed out now because they almost see the handwriting on the wall that they're saying, you know what, they are not going to be able to deliver any longer, as long as they can't put on regular fight cards with fans in the seats. At least somebody like a Top Rank who has an ESPN deal, they're able to keep the fighters working, put them on ESPN from the bubble. It's a regular deal.
Right. Okay, but let me hit right on that, because DAZN uses a facility that is overseas, that is a bubbled facility, if you will, that is in the backyard of a mansion, basically, is where they have set up a production and a ring. So if you have that, you have the bubble capacity. Arum is doing it, and granted, Bob's got a lot of fighters under his belt. But if he's doing it, people, I think, should rightfully ask then to DAZN, why can't you do it? It would seem to be the same sort of instance where Arum doesn't have people in the seats, you don't have people in the seats, and you have a subscription base. If you still were able to give us the solid fighters, then we would still keep our subscription. Yes?
Very possibly, yes. But look, Arum has this ESPN platform. Both ESPN and their pay arm, ESPN Plus, which doesn't cost $9.99 a month, and now it's no longer $9.99 a month for DAZN. I think if you want to go month to month, I believe it's $20 a month. And still, let's say you find out a fight is on DAZN, and you're going to pay $20 for the month subscription. It's certainly worth it, because $20 is certainly a lot better than paying $100 for a pay-per-view.
Sure.
And if you just go for the $20 a month just to watch that one fight, you're going to get several other fights. But with Arum and ESPN is free. You get it. Just about all of us have it on our cable system. You get ESPN Plus if you pay $4.99 a month, $5 a month, and Aram is giving you October 17th, the biggest fight of the year, and it's not even going to be on ESPN Plus. It's going to be on ESPN, the lightweight championship between Vasily Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez. There is no fight that's bigger than that. I think the numbers on that, because it's going to be on ESPN, not on their pay arm, I think the numbers are going to be well over 3 million people are going to sit down and watch the fight that night. Fight of the year coming up in October. I can't wait for it. So Aram is he's still delivering these big fights, and there's going to be nobody there in the bubble for this tremendous fight, but you're going to have eyeballs watching ESPN. And again, this is not ESPN Plus, it's ESPN. DAZN can't do that. They have to charge people, and many people, again, like myself, thousands of me have dropped out. They stopped saying, you know what, back in March, you're not going to be putting on any more fights. I'm leaving. And now they're hearing about all the squabbles and this and that, and they're saying, I'm not coming back until I know you got a very viable, stable product. And we don't know that it is. So the big question in boxing right now is DAZN going to be here this time next year? And yeah, the owner of it is worth 20 some odd billion dollars. But as I've heard many billionaires say, when they're questioned, well, you know, so what? You're only going to lose $1 million on this, or $2 million.
Yeah, wait a minute. I got to tell you something. The people I've met, I've never met anybody squeakier with a penny than a billionaire.
Well, that's one of the reasons they say that's why we're billionaires, because we don't make deals and go into business deals and partnerships and everything where we say, well, you're only going to lose 10 million, 15 million, or you may have to take a year where you're going to lose 150 million, but you could make a lot more back. We're not billionaires because we're losing that kind of money.
Right.
Let's see what happens over the next year. Let's see next September, 2021, where we are with DAZN, because that can really shake up boxing a lot, because if they bail out, then where does Canelo Alvarez go? Is he going to win this lawsuit against DAZN? And I'm wondering what everybody is thinking. Who's right here? Is Canelo Alvarez right? Is he going to win the lawsuit? If you were on a jury and you had to listen to the story, would you vote in favor of Canelo Alvarez, or would you say, sorry, Canelo, I mean, you're going to make 15, 20 million on your next fight, not 36? I mean, how is it going to go when the jury hears about this?
There's the next thing to talk about, though, Randy, because this is in a lawsuit stage right now. Lawsuits don't get settled overnight. They take weeks, months, and years this thing could drag out. So I think your question is a pertinent one with regard to DAZN, which, if you're a boxing fan, you want to see survive because you want to see more boxing out there. And there's been a huge dearth of live boxing in the last couple of years anyway, since the networks basically abandoned it in so many ways, and now ESPN picking up some of the slack. But it still then leads to that thinking process. Is DAZN pliable for the future? Are they an organization that people see is going to be around? Or is there now a tremendous question as to whether or not this is ever going to work?
That is the good question.
They still got to get fighters from somewhere. They still have to bring fighters in, and you still have to bring in quality fights, correct?
That is very true. And quality fights is the term here, because you could take a Triple G and put him in the ring, and you could put Canelo in the ring.
Sure.
And you put some of these other guys like undefeated Demetrius Andrade from Rhode Island in the ring, who's as talented as anybody. And he could probably get in with Canelo and Triple G and give them a fight, if not beat them. And there are other guys. But the thing is, who are they going to put on the other side? They're the A side. Who's the B side? And if Canelo is, let's say, okay, I'll take a cut. I'll take a $15 million cut. I'll fight for $21 million. I mean, I know you're
so sorry for him right now. I'm weeping. I'm weeping.
Right. Okay, so he fights for $21 million, but he says, you know what? I'm not going to fight a top-level fighter for that. I want a next-tier fighter. But of course, you want to say, wait a minute, you're getting 21 million. Let's think back, and yeah, it was yesterday, 1971. Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali, when they fought each other, they fought for 2.5 million apiece. Can you imagine what they would fight for today? It would be 250 million apiece, not 2.5 million. So there are going to be some people, just the way there are people who are red and blue and Republican and Democrat and so forth. There's always going to be people on both sides. There are going to be people who say, Canelo, we feel for you. You signed this contract and they're not living up to it. We're with you, man. And then there's going to be other people who say, come on, give me a break. You're going to get paid 20 million bucks, or you're going to be paid 10 million to fight a lower level opponent. I mean, 10 million just to see you fight because you're the face of boxing. He can punch, he can box. He's already showed us he can beat light heavyweights, 168 pounders, 160 pounders. He is a future Hall of Famer, and he's only about 28, 29 years old.
But we're still talking about fans, boxing fans, who are being asked to shell out whatever it is, 10 bucks, 15 bucks, 20 bucks, in the case of pay-per-views, sometimes 80 or 90, whatever, at a time when unemployment is as high as it's ever been around the world in many cases. People simply don't have that discretionary money to throw out there. It makes one think that DAZN simply is not going to be able to put enough A and B fighters out there. Look, we've seen the tomato can parades before here, and if you've got a guy like Alvarez, it's wonderful. But you're not going to be able to do that every time out of the box. You're going to wind up with second, third, fourth-rate fighters. And I have to wonder if the business model is correct at this point, where in many cases you prepare for disasters and you still have a ring, you still have a place to hold the fights, you still have an ability to go global with a broadcast.
Right.
How many boxers can you put up there that people are going to want to pay for it? Look, I don't pay for it. I'm not about to pay for it. I haven't seen enough return on it. And me as a fight fan going, come on, I don't need this. It's something that maybe in another year or two I'll look at, and in another year or two, there's not going to be DAZN.
We're going to have to see, because I really am curious where this, and you're right about the lawsuit. It could take years. And certainly Canelo is not going to want to sit around and not fight for years. And they're going to have to strike some kind of agreement, a deal, whatever. De La Hoya, whom he is suing, Oscar De La Hoya, Golden Boy Promotions, which is the promoter of Canelo. Canelo is suing his TV network, DAZN. He's suing Golden Boy, his promoter. But the promoter is kind of making nice here. Listen, Canelo, we hear you, but DAZN is not doing the right thing here. Well, neither is Golden Boy. But I hear Golden Boy. I'm trying to play both sides. I hear Golden Boy.
Yeah.
How can we get you the big fights when you say that you only want to fight in front of fans, and we can't get fans anywhere in the world to get into well, you can in Australia. They actually put on a fight recently that was very successful with Tim Tszyu and everything. We talked about that. Maybe take it over there. But how much would it really be worth with the fight fans come out? I think they would, because Canelo has become such a big deal that maybe they could put it at some soccer stadium, some 50,000-seat stadium in Australia with Canelo Alvarez, pack the place. And who knows, maybe against a top fighter, a Triple G, a Danny Jacobs again, whoever it might be. And he could make his money. But I think over the next year, that billionaire owner of DAZN is going to have to make some decisions, because they are spending and just bleeding a lot of money. And again, billionaires do not like bleeding a lot of money.
Brings up an interesting question right now. As we emerge from the summer of COVID-19, we have seen the UFC make a couple of very halting efforts to try and get back on the stage, and they've made mistakes along the way. Dana White, if he doesn't want to admit it, he probably should. And then you have Arum working his bubble out of Las Vegas right now, trying to keep fights in front of ESPN. In your opinion, and as someone who has been a commissioner at New York State, the athletic commissioner there, and been involved in the creation of fights and fight cards, as you look at these two entities, boxing and MMA, or if you will, boxing and UFC,
right,
which one has the greater opportunity to emerge more, quote unquote, victorious, if you will, after COVID-19 begins to fade? Which one, in your opinion, is better prepared to get out from underneath this shadow and bring the fans back quickly? And I will tell you up front, I think that's UFC. And I think they have the better opportunity to do it quickly. What's your take?
Well, again, looking at both sides, I really believe that because the UFC is the big umbrella in mixed martial arts, they're the big daddy. They control the big fighters, the big fights, the big money. And their fighters answer strictly to them. Their champions fight who Dana White tells them they're going to fight.
It's a control issue.
And this is one of the reasons that I think they work so well. And it's one of the reasons that I have long been saying there's a problem with that. It basically creates a monopoly, and the fighters can't make other decisions. Well, they can. They could leave the UFC.
They can, but where are they going to fight? What are they going to fight, in the back bar room somewhere? I mean,
well, that's just about it. I mean, there's Bellator, and there's a few others that pay far less. So the fighters are going to be making thousands of dollars instead of maybe tens of thousands of dollars. Then you move to boxing, and you have a lot of big umbrellas there. And there's a lot of fighters under those umbrellas. There's the biggest of all. There's Top Rank. There's Golden Boy. There's Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing. Now, those three alone have many of the fighters. There's Star Boxing out of New York, which right now is totally, basically silent. They've been putting on some of their fights in conjunction with Bob Arum. There's Main Events Kathy Duva, who's being inducted into the Hall of Fame next year. And, she's got a number of good fighters. So there's other promoters out there. There's even Don King is still around, although he doesn't have very many top fighters anymore. And he's basically on the back, not just on the back nine, but way, way, way on the back nine. But the ones, again, that we said, the Top Ranks, the Bob Arum Top Rank, the Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar De La Hoya, Matchroom Boxing, and Eddie Hearn, those three are each like MMA's UFC. They control a lot of your top fighters. But Matchroom Boxing also does a lot of business with DAZN. And I think if DAZN goes down, they still, because they're overseas, they have Sky Sports over there, and they're doing well. But it's not going to be like it was with DAZN. As far as Arum, he has really implanted himself. He's got those ESPN contracts. Oscar De La Hoya also has some ESPN contracts. So I think that with the number of prospects, especially the Top Rank has signed, and he has signed many, many young prospects. De La Hoya has some outstanding prospects, not as many as Top Rank, but I think boxing really stands to make some big noise once this pandemic is over, if indeed it ever does in our lifetime, and we don't know.
There's something else that comes to mind here, and we haven't really touched on this, and I wanted to get to it for the last couple of weeks. Of course, the Summer Olympic Games has been postponed because of COVID-19. Right. Everything has changed. Mm-hmm. I and you certainly come from an era when U.S. boxing was to be feared around the world. There were great boxers that came out of the Olympic ranks.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking off the top of my head, Jose Pedraza, who's coming up for a fight here about a week or so from when we're doing this on September the 10th. He's a former Olympian, a 2008, I believe, Olympian for the United States. What happened, Randy? There's simply is not the great Olympic fighters that America used to have. We don't see them. We don't hear them. Nobody, I think, really fears them at this point. And not only that, but Olympic boxing has taken a huge step back, I think, in the last 10, 20 years, to where it's not nearly as big as it was. I mean, you still have women's gymnastics and swimming and diving will still take a lot of what goes on at the Olympics, but boxing has sort of been relegated back to a third-tier status. Are we looking at a time when, strictly speaking, from United States Olympic boxing, there's a dearth out there and kids don't want to get involved in it anymore because they see the dollars out there and the promoters grab them, and why go to the Olympics and when you can be out there and try and make a couple of bucks. What's the reality?
You know, it's funny. As you mentioned the Olympics, I still hear the Olympic song playing, and I could still, I don't know what it is, I still hear in my head, as you said that and you said gymnastics, I'm hearing Howard Cosell say, and today we've got gymnastics with Olga Korbut, Nellie Kim, and the queen of gymnastics, Ludmila Turisheva, here on ABC.
Here on ABC, Wide World of Sports. Careful now, I'll slip into Cosell and we'll be gone. I'll do the whole rest of the show as Howard. I'll have to get a cigar out. We're all in trouble here.
Oh,
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
I hate that one. I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear my idol going.
I just had to drop that in there. It's one. Okay, but on the Olympics themselves, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal anymore. Nobody cares.
Well, let's
Not
go
with
back.
boxing.
1976, maybe the greatest Olympic team ever, with Howard Davis, Sugar Ray Leonard, the Spinks brothers, Leo Randolph. And then you move ahead to 1984, another terrific team, with Mark Breland and Evander Holyfield and Pernell Whitaker, Meldrick Taylor, Tyrell Biggs. How many gold medals did we keep winning? And then, boom, it stops. Then I think the worst thing happened in 1988. The Olympics were over in Korea, and our best fighter, Roy Jones Jr., unbeatable. He went out there and he won his fight, clearly won the fight.
Yes.
But it went to a decision. He didn't stop his opponent from Korea, and the judges cheated. They admitted later they cheated, and they voted for the Korean opponent. They cheated, and that took the balloon that was Olympic boxing and put a pin in it. We have never been the same since, and the judging has been beyond atrocious.
Okay, but the judging stinks, and you and I are going to talk about judging here in a couple of moments when it comes down to the professional ranks.
But just because of that, a lot of guys said, I'm just going to get a little bit of an amateur background. I don't want to have to deal with the miserable politics of amateur boxing. I'm just going to get myself a nice little, it's like, going to high school and then you're ready for the college. I'm just going to get enough education. I don't need the Olympics. I'm only going to get totally screwed. It happened to Shakur Stevenson in 2016 in Rio. It happens all the time.
There's no prestige anymore, Randy. There's if you look at a kid and say you have a chance to bring home a gold medal from the Olympics.
Yeah, so what?
So what? Big deal. It doesn't make a difference. Look, I can be either going to put up with the nonsense in the international community here, in the international judging, or I can go and I can start getting some fights and making some money. Boom. I mean, that is it not fair to say that's really what it is right there? The prestige out the window. The promoters will come in, grab them, try to get them for a couple of bucks, knowing that they have someone that they can create. Why? And here's another pitch. The promoters may even come to them and say, don't waste your career. Don't waste your time. You're only young for a certain amount of time. Why waste it over there waiting for somebody to screw you out of a medal, another Korean judge or an Australian judge or a South American judge or an American judge, whatever, will screw you when you can actually be in here and make some money.
Yeah. Listen, there's a guy right now who decided he had to make a decision, and he's one of my he's one of my favorite fighters. He just turned 18. He signed with Top Rank when he was 16 years old. He just won his fifth, I believe he's 5-0 now. He's a welterweight. His name is Xander Zayas. Xander, last name is Zayas, Zayas. His middle name starts with Y, so his initials are XYZ. This kid is loaded with two things. One is talent, one is charisma. And he was asked, why didn't you wait for the next Olympics? And he said, because I would have had to sit around just for years when I could have been making myself some real good money. If I had to wait for another year, I would have done it. But I decided not to. And he turned pro, and I think he made a great decision. These guys don't want to have to sit around and wait anymore for the Olympics. If they were 13 or 14 years old, of course they will. But when you're on the cusp there and you got to wait a few more years, and you're going to be 2021 before you can get in the ring again, as an amateur, They
Wastes
say
a
no,
lot of time. As somebody said,
Definitely.
you're only young once.
Right. How much money can I make? And will it really make a difference? Will I make that much more money if I come back with a gold medal? Right now,
No.
Xander Zayas says, I have this great amateur background. I have everything else going for me. I'm going to sign with Top Rank. And I think it was one of the greatest amateur moves I've ever seen at 17 years old. And again, a lot of it has to do with the fact that the kid not only can fight, but the kid is just loaded with charisma and charm. He's like, to me, he is like the best fighter I have seen in every single way since Sugar Ray Leonard. It's like Sugar Ray Leonard was home cooking, and everybody loves home cooking. And with Xander Zayas, I think you're going to see the same thing. And right now, a lot of people are saying, who? Watch. You're going to be seeing him a lot on ESPN, especially over the next year, because Top Rank is going to keep him busy. Xander Zayas. Xander Zayas, I think he's the next, and he is a welterweight, the next Sugar Ray Leonard.
Let's get on to judging then, which you talked about. And that's been a constant. I can honestly remember that you and I probably talked about judging 20 years ago when we did television together for the first time, and how bad it is. The judging still stinks in professional boxing in many ways, because there's a complete inequity and inequality of it that crosses the board. Wherever you are, whether it's a state or a country, there's no median line for judging. And you've even seen a recent example of it where it's just gotten out of hand, where judges there's no training for these damn judges. Seems, here, go ahead, give you a pad and a paper and go out there and tell me who you think got the most hits in and the most good shots to the jaw. Judging is still terrible in boxing, and that's another reason why I think people don't want to be involved anymore.
There are bad decisions. There's close decisions. We've seen some. Any time a fight goes to a decision, if it's like this, with this guy being just dominant, you know that anybody, you don't have to know a heck of a lot about boxing. You watch the rounds, you say, okay, this guy right here, he won the fight. Every round that goes by, 180 seconds, 3 minutes, those 180 seconds go by, you have your scorecard, and I'll say, okay, you just watched that first round, who won it? You don't even think twice, your hand goes right to the paper, and you score it. Now, the scoring system is basically, it's universal. 10 points to the winner of the round, 9 or less to the loser. Just a few years ago, there was also the 5-point system, meaning 5 points to the winner of the round, 4 or less to the loser. It's all the same thing.
Sure.
Or, back in the 70s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, until the late 80s, New York had a rounds just a point. You win the round, you get 1 point. If the judge felt that you wanted bigger, you can give the guy 2 points. The loser gets none. The reasoning was, why should you get any points? You didn't win the round. The loser gets nothing. The winner gets 1, maybe 2. And if he won it big time, he gets 3. But any way you look at it, whether it's a 1-0, whether it's a 5-point system, a 10-point system, it's all the same thing. If I ask you, and I'm asking all the viewers, next time you watch a fight, take a piece of paper, and I want you to do this. I want you to, let's say it's a 6-rounder. I want you to make up the scorecard, 6 rounds, fighter A, fighter B. You watch the round. And every time a fighter wins it like this, don't make it 10-9. Make it 10-8. Because he won it bigger. If the round is like this, and you got to think about it for a second, the round ends, you say, who do I give this round to? And you take your pen, pencil. That's a 10-9 round. Score it. It's 10-9. It's 10-8. Let's say he dominates the round. He wins it going away. Is this kind of round the same thing as this kind of round?
But isn't that dangerous? Because we're still looking at opinion. And I think a lot of what happens is many of the judges are good at what they do, but then you bring in the occasional judges in there who do not have the experience, and you are judging it then on their judgment of opinion, which changes everything and can tell the difference in a close decision. That, to me, is even more frightening.
That's why I was commissioner. And that's why we have commissions. And when I came aboard, I always wanted to do that. I wanted to see what the judges were thinking. So my first week on the job, I called a big seminar, and I had all the judges come to this, and I said, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start a new scoring system here. 10-9 in a close round, 10-8 in a wider round, doesn't even have to be a knockdown. If one guy wins it like this in maybe a 10-8 round and knocks his opponent down, I don't care if you make it 10-6. Show me who won the round. And I don't care if there was no knockdown. If one guy dominates 180 seconds out of the 180 seconds, the other guy couldn't land a punch. The other guy, the loser, gets hit with everything in the book, and he did everything but get knocked out. It's certainly not a 10-9 round, and it's probably not even a 10-8 round. It could be a 10-7 round. If you want to throw a knockdown or two in, it's 10-6 and 10-5. You got points, you use them. Well, the veterans, the ones who are at that point already around since the late 50s, early 60s, and this is 1988 when I was doing this, they said, we're not scoring it like this. That's ridiculous. And one-on-one, I said, I took each one on the side, but I said to the whole group, I expect that you're all going to score it this new way. Some of you are not going to like it, but if I see that you're constantly scoring 10-9s, I'm going to sit you down. And also, at that time, one of the things I did, New York only had that 1-point system. I brought on the 10-point system so I could be universal with everybody else. And do you know that the ones who accepted the fact that we were going to start doing that, 10-9, 10-8, 10-7, in my 8 years as commissioner, I never had one score in New York that was crazy, because the judges, as they're sitting there watching these rounds, let's say it's a 6-round fight. Fighter A wins 3 of those rounds. Fighter B wins 3 of the rounds. The only thing is, the ones that Fighter B won, every one was like this. It was close. The ones that Fighter A won were maybe like this. So what you do is you put 10-8, and then you just write quickly, dominant round. So at the end of the fight, yeah, they each won 3 rounds, but Fighter A won his rounds bigger than Fighter B, and it saves a lot of bad decisions. I didn't have one bad decision. And also, if there's a close fight, and let's say one guy then has a monster round, and he wins it 10-6, something like that, that's like a grand slam home run. It puts him right back in the ball game, maybe even puts him in the lead. I like my scoring system, and I wish judges would try that. And the next time all you viewers are watching a fight, and you're going to be watching this weekend, take your scorecards. Instead of 10-9s, give me that 10-8, give me the 10-7. Don't be afraid to use the points. And then I take my scorecard and I put them in files. And later on, when I look back, what happened in this particular fight? And I take a look at my scorecard. Okay, 10-8, 10-8, 10-8, 10-7 with a knockdown. I see exactly what happened. If I just see a 10-8 and no mention of a knockdown, okay, it was a 10-8. It was a dominant round. I know what happened. The judges are telling me, here's how I'm watching the fight. And if I happen to see a guy constantly scoring the 10-9s, he's not thinking. He or she is not thinking. And it takes a little while. But once you get used to using the points, you give the winner 10, you give the loser 9 or less. And again, not every round is like this. Rounds are like this. That's a 10-9. That could be a 10-7. Score it like that. If you watched it like that, your eyes should tell you, that was a different round than the 10-9 round, and I'm going to score it like that. And that's where you're going to see, I think, the the slowing down of some of these horrible decisions. And there was one on Fox last week where two of the judges, it wasn't even a close fight. All of us watching it on television had it one-sided for this veteran, Yordenis Ugas, out of Cuba. It was a 12-round fight. I had Yordenis winning 9 of the rounds. In fact, Fox's Marcos Villegas, who's their official scorer, gave Ugas all 12 rounds. The judges scored it 115, 113, 2 of them. I mean, close as close can be for Ugas, while another judge, Dr. Lou Moret, who's a veteran, and I think he likes the puncher better than the boxer. And every time Ramos, that's exactly because it was his opinion, he scored it 117, 111 for Ramos. Ramos's own family knew that he didn't win. He didn't win 9 rounds of the fight. As a matter of fact, he probably didn't win 3 rounds of the fight. And if a judge can't see that, you sit the judge down. It's time for that judge to sit down. I don't care how old they are, how young they are. If they can't see a clear victory like that, the judge has to sit down.
It's a great idea, but we're asking judges to think.
Well, exactly.
I'm going to get hammered by
some
who are judges. What do you mean we have to think? It really takes a lot more, because as we're looking at it, you're looking at the number of hits, you're looking at what happens, you're looking at the action in the fight, you're looking at so many things. I mean, I'll be honest with you, sometimes it seems like maybe we're going to get to the stage eventually where, whether it's MMA or whether it's boxing, you will have sensors that will be located inside the gloves, and you will get to an actual punch, a punch count, and not only that, but a power of the punch, an effectiveness of the punch, that maybe we're going to have to electronically decide this, maybe more than anything else, and add that into boxing. I don't know. People would say that's impossible. Of course, it's not impossible. You can do anything these days, but to have that sort of electronic background, if you will, to see how hard was the punch, because I think we'll eventually get to the point where you'll be able to tell that is the punch, let's say, at a pressure 5, is it a pressure 7? Is it where was it? I think we'll eventually get to that point and take judges out of the mix. And in some cases, it's not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea, but again, we're talking so futuristic, and I don't think we're talking 2 years from now. Maybe down the road. And let's talk about right now. Let's talk right now. We have
right now. Right now, it needs to be standardized, and people need to be better educated, and there needs to be some ability to create some other, not necessarily opinion, but observation that could make things a little more equitable.
You know what I think should happen? There should be, of course, a lot more seminars. One of the commissioners does something. This is something that I was going to do before I left office in 1995. And it was going to be one of the next show. What I was going to do, any judge who was on the short end, let's say Judge A had it this way, and Judge B had it the same way, and Judge C had it completely the other way, where the fans were booing him. And when I got the scorecards back, I looked at these scorecards and what in the world was he doing? Well, that judge now gets sat down, and what they have to do, they have to come to every small club show. And you know what? Sometimes they have to drive 50, 60, 80 miles to go to a small club show. They don't get paid for it. Then they got to sit in this seat. It's called the punishment seat. And that every member of the commission knows that the person sitting there is in the... And it's basically a humiliation thing. You don't want to be there. It's horrifying. And you got to score every round of every fight, and you just got to keep turning in your scorecards. The commission goes over it, and maybe we'd be looking at it saying, you know what? This is a horrible scorecard. Get rid of it.
I like this. I like this.
And
holding them accountable.
Yes, that's exactly. And commissions do not do that today. They do not hold the officials accountable. The referees, remember, the referee holds the life of the fighter in his or her hands.
Yes.
The judges hold the livelihood. They're the ones, they screw up a decision, and we've seen it all too often. The guy should have won the fight, And he lost. And it's like 3 steps backwards now because he lost this decision, which we all know he didn't lose. Hold the judges accountable. Stop with the politics. I can't tell you how many guys, when I came on, they were already in place.
I like it.
Because they were friends with the commissioner.
Ah, there it is, right there. Friends with the commission, friends with the commissioners, friends with the people in power, and that's how they become judges, which is completely wrong, which means you have to go ahead and standardize this, employ them, do something, hold them accountable, and punish them. I love the punishment idea for judges. I love it.
I'm not saying you take them out on time.
Put them in shackles, damn it.
And tie them up and lash them 50 lash. Well, it's close to it. It's
Why
a boxing lashing. They got to go into the punishment seat. They got to show up at these remote places. It's not a television fight. They got to go to every single one, bad weather, good weather, no excuses. They got to show up. They got to work every fight, not get paid for it. And they got to, it's humiliating. But you know what? If you're telling me that you want to be a fight judge and you tell me I'm the best fight judge out there, well, no, you're not. I just saw your score last week, and that's why you're in the punishment seat.
By the way, do not downplay the effects of a good lashing. I mean, have them right there in the ring and said it's okay. Let's.
I hear you.
Oh, don't worry about it. We'll be getting letters now from people, and people will be all over social media going, "Oh my God, did you see what they said? They were talking about lashing judges." Go ahead, why not?
But again, and to those people, I say, maybe they should be lashed. They just hurt somebody really bad with their score. Why shouldn't they be punished?
We're in such trouble.
And listen, Ed and I take letters. We want to hear from you guys. Write me at my personal email. It's thecommish@gmail.com. The commish.
Hold on now, which one is it?
Randy G.
Okay. I have, first of all, there's your Facebook here, which is at Randy Commish Gordon, and you can find them there.
Yeah.
That's the one way to do it as well. There's also your Twitter, which is at Commish Randy G. And the email again you want to hand out is which one?
The Commish Randy G @gmail.com.
Okay, so you didn't tell me this. I'm going to have to put that into our graphic package now. So
I want our viewers to email me on your thoughts, your questions to me, Ed. It could be your questions on judging, whether you think there should be a punishment seat, what you would do if you were the commissioner. What would you do to a judge if this person, man or woman, messed up the way we saw the judge mess up on that Fox television fight? I'm telling you, Marcos Villegas, again, who's the expert scorer and the rules expert for Fox, he couldn't believe it. They said, okay, Marcos, fight's over. How do you have it scored? And he had it 120, 108, every single round for Ugas. And when the scores came back, basically he said, I'm speechless. I don't know how the judge could have had it 117, 111.
We'll do that, or they can send it to mytickettothearena@gmail.com, which is the overall main mailbox here, and we'll go ahead and answer it, and we'll talk about it here. So we got to get out of here, but before we do, and I mean, this has all been great because we have to discuss this, but I want to turn this to something a little more personal to both you and I. You and I are both New York City kids, New York City, New Jersey kids. I mean, we both grew up in the area, New Jersey, Connecticut, whatever. And we are taping this show today on September the 10th, which is the day before the 19th anniversary of what happened on 9/11/2001. And many people who are watching this, I would probably say that because we're dealing with the type of audience that we are, remember it. But there's a whole generation that doesn't, because it's 20, 19, 20, 21, 22 years. A lot of people watching and boxing fans now, and other people were kids or not even born at that time. So we continue to commemorate what, in my mind, was one of the darkest days in American history. Certainly the one that changed the world and changed all of our lives in so many ways. But I wanted to ask you, because I don't think you and I have ever talked about this, your thoughts as they go back to that day 19 years ago and what has happened since, but the effect that it had on you personally when 9/11 happened.
I was working in a gym on Long Island, a very big gym, as a personal trainer, and I was working with one of my clients. And we started training at 9 o'clock. At 8:30, I went downstairs on a quick break, got myself a bite to eat, cup of coffee, whatever. And then I looked up at the television in the coffee shop there, and the cameras were trained to the World Trade Centers. And I see smoke coming out of the window. And I looked up and I asked the owner of the coffee shop, what happened? He said, oh, I don't know. I'm just seeing it for the first time. So you're wondering, is there a major fire going on? You just didn't know. You saw black smoke pouring out of basically one or two windows. But now I go upstairs and it's 8:45, 8:50. I'm waiting for my 9 o'clock client. And now we know that a plane has hit building 1. I'm like, oh my God, a plane. And being that flying is in my family, Dad was a pilot. They said, maybe he lost his way. I'm saying, no, that's impossible. It's a cloudless day. It is the best day for flying. Nobody could lose their way. You can't lose your way over Manhattan.
Well, remember, that's what a lot of people thought, because years ago, and I think it was in the 30s, and my date might be off, but in the 30s, there was a plane that crashed into the Empire State Building with a tremendous amount of bad weather around it. Then, of course, we had an accident years later that happened in Manhattan. But before that, people thought, okay, well, maybe it was a small plane that just got off course.
That's what we originally thought.
Yeah.
There was. So my thought is maybe it was a private plane being flown by one guy, had a heart attack. It's happened where the pilot gets a heart attack, boom, it's over, and he just crashed. Because I couldn't see any pilot losing his way on a cloudless
It was a
day.
perfect day. It was a beautiful day.
I don't remember the last time it was such a perfect day. And then we kept watching, and you see the fire getting bigger and bigger. Now the smoke is coming out of other windows. And as we were watching, all of a sudden there was an explosion in the next building. And I remember thinking right away, what was that? What just happened? And then they said another plane has apparently hit the building, blah, blah, blah. One of my friends was on a Stairmaster. And as he was using the Stairmaster, he's seeing this on the television. His daughter worked there. He quickly picked up the phone and he calls her cell phone, which went right to a busy signal, whatever. And he's realizing right away, and then within minutes, both buildings were engulfed, both buildings came down, and he was screaming a scream that to this day stays in here, because he knew that his daughter was not going to make it out of there. She worked on about the 90-something floor, and he just knew that she couldn't make it out of there, and she didn't. And we all drove home. They closed the gym, and we knew, of course, and we heard about the other planes that had landed, and we just felt that the U.S. was under attack, which in fact they were, and the air routes were shut down. And I'm about a mile and a half away from a local airfield, and over the next couple days, no flights throughout the United States, but every night we would hear some F-16s take off from the airfield near us, and it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden out of nowhere you'd hear, and you knew that we were patrolling the air with these F-16s, and nobody knew what was going on. The way November 22nd, 1963 stays with me, the assassination of JFK. That date, 9/11, stays with me, and it will stay forever. If you were alive, if you were old enough to remember it at that time, it's just firmly, it's like a tattoo. It's a tattoo that stays in here.
A mental tattoo, yeah.
Forever. And it's changed, not me, but it's changed all of us. Because the way we travel, we don't travel the same way. You can't just walk onto get onto a plane where we used to just walk to the gate. You can't do that anymore. If you have a bottle of water, they confiscate it from you. They've taken my nail clippers from me. And you want to get angry, but you say, this is the life that we have been thrust into. And tomorrow it's going to be just about 20. It's going to be 19 years. I cannot believe that much time has gone by.
And I think that's the correlation here between what happened on 9/11/2001 and the COVID-19 summer that we're undergoing. Oddly enough, 19 years, COVID-19, seeing a strange correlation there. But what happened on that day has changed so many of our lives and fostered so many changes that we simply don't have control over, that we simply have to understand are now, and I don't want to be crass, but it's the cost of doing business in life. It is simply just, and I don't mean that in a business sense, but that's a metaphor, that this is what we're given and we have to do the best we can with it now in light of what happened. Certainly lives changed after 9/11, and now in the COVID-19, we are again being handed things that we have no control over, that are the cost of doing business as human beings, and we have to understand it and get by with it. I mean, my goodness, there are some people who are still with us now who went through World War II and then went through 9/11 and are now going through COVID-19. Imagine what they have to consider. But we just have to consider that it will get better, that things will improve, that our lives will hopefully get better. But I'm very affected by 9/11, very affected. I mean, tomorrow is going to be a difficult day for me for a number of reasons. But we have to just hope that we survive. We move on. We accept what we have been given, and we fight what we can. But I just want to say that I hope that people understand that from a certain era and a certain age, there's two words that we have to continue to use, and those are never forget. And it's unfortunate that there's another time that was used for in the wake of World War II where some people seem to forget. And I think that just 19 years later, some people have forgotten and almost put it out of their mind. Never forget. Never forget. And it will hopefully make us better people as we move on. And a reminder that here in just a couple of seconds when we close out the show, there's a short clip that I want everybody to see, which is promoting what, if you go to the 9/11 Museum at Ground Zero, once it is open, there is a correlation between sports and 9/11 and what happened in those days after 9/11, where sports was really a true healing factor.
Yeah.
And Randy, those of us who remember it, what the New York Yankees did at that point, right in the midst of everything there and the time they took, that was a healing. And sometimes instead of knocking down sports, we need to understand that it actually is a big part of our lives and it can be used for a positive effect, which we'll talk about again at another time. My friend, always a pleasure. We will get back again together next week. We will deal with this. We'll hopefully not have to deal with lawsuits. No legalese. My God, please. And I will. I have to still, every time I go to the store, I get home and I walk out and I go, I forgot to get lollipops. Yeah, I promise you that I will. I promise you that I will write it on the inside of my eyelids, so that when we meet again next time, I will have lollipops, and we will see. We will have to see how much the Tootsie Pop goes down in the length of a show. There you go.
This is going to last me the rest of the day. I mean, a little lick here, a little lick there. It's just so good.
Won't last me that way. No, I get to a point where after a while, I get to the point where in the Tootsie Pop, when I can see the Tootsie Roll through the sugar shell, that's when it's time to bite and go right through. Come on.
Nope, I get it right down to the Tootsie, everything. And then we go to work. But
it's an all day, man. You've been working that thing far too long. Okay. Give my best to the lady Ronnie, if you will. Best always, my friend. And again, by the way, let's remind everybody before we get out of here again, I want to make sure I take care of all this right here. Don't forget that Randy is the co-host of Randy's Ringside on Facebook. That's at Randy Kamish Gordon. You can catch him there. He is also the co-host with Jerry Cooney on At the Fights on Sirius XM Mondays and Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time on channel 156. And also, if you want to follow him on Twitter, you can do so at @CommishRandyG and catch him here as well. And we'll discuss all this. And, oh, yeah, by the way, don't forget, there still is Glove Affair.
Glove Affair.
My lifelong journey in the world of professional boxing by the author Randy G, who I think he took that picture early on in the COVID-19 because it just looks like, you know, you were looks like you were stuck inside for a long time on that picture.
I was, and I'm working on the sequel right now called Glove Story.
Nice.
And so there's going to be a lot of tremendous stories. My one of my very personal favorites is my view of the No Mas fight. I was the only one allowed into Roberto Duran's dressing room from the media right after he said no mas. What a chapter it turned out to be. So that's going to be part of my new book.
Okay, hang on to that because we'll get to that when we talk about the book. Randy, always a pleasure, my friend. Take care, be well, stay safe. We'll talk to you soon. The commish, baby. Love having him on the show, just the stories that we can tell. Don't forget, you can catch this show again. You can go to welcometothearena.com, and you can download the show from there. Also, all the audio podcast platforms to catch it on. You'll find out about that momentarily. As we look here and do this show on September the 10th, we look forward to remembering some of the healing moments that came out of one of the darkest days in American history, and that was 9/11. And for those of you watching this show, our condolences, our love to all the people, all the families, the friends, and the associates of those who still go back to that day and those who lost their family and friends. And our love is with you always in remembering and trying to always look forward. And again, the words are simply, never forget. For Randy Gordon, everybody here, I'm Ed Berliner. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Until we meet again right here on The Man in the Arena, rock on, true believers. See ya.
It was just a numbing experience because the last thing on your mind is baseball at this point in time.
Nobody knew what to do or how to act or what was too much or what was not enough.
I realized that there was something for us to do, and it was to try to, distract the best we could. They said, this NY on your hat represents more than the Yankees. I said, it represents the city of New York.
All I kept thinking and we kept saying is, I hope he throws a good pitch. I hope he throws a good pitch. And he threw the perfect pitch and the crowd went crazy. It's almost like that perfect pitch started the healing process for everybody.
And that feeling never went away.